Welcome to WitchLit, a place to talk about the craft of writing and writing the craft. I'm your host, Victoria Raschke, author, publisher, witch, and nosy Scorpio. You're here, so you're probably an avid reader of books on witchcraft and the occult. And if you're looking for an online source for alternative books and indie decks, LaPantheraStudio.com has an amazing selection of books, tarot decks, and oracle cards to choose from. No matter your path, whether you're a tarot reader or a mystic oracle, find the right books for your library. That's LaPantheraStudio.com. WitchLit listeners can enjoy 15% off their purchases with the code WitchLit. That's WITCHLIT, all one word. Link in the show notes. WitchLit is also brought to you by 1000 Volt Press, an independent, family-owned digital and print-on-demand publisher of books we want to see in the world. If you'd like to support WitchLit and 1000 Volt Press, the best way to do that is buy our books. Our most recent title is Pagan Roots, Reclaiming Concepts of the Sacred by Yvonne Aburrow. Other titles include A Death in the Dry River by Lisa Allen Agostini, Conjuring the Commonplace by Lane Fuller and Corey Thomas Hutchison, and my most recent novel, Verona Green, A Story of Art and Magic. Head over to 1000voltpress.com/store or order them wherever you buy books. You can also support the show by buying us a cup of coffee at ko-fi.com/witchlitpodcast. All those links can be found in the show notes. Listening, subscribing, and leaving a rating or review also supports the podcast, and we really appreciate it, so thank you. Next month, I'll be reading and discussing The Witchcraft and Folklore of Dartmoor by Ruth E. St. Ledger Gordon with fellow podcast host Mark Norman, who you may know from the Folklore podcast and his many books, including Telling the Bees and Other Customs, Zoinks, the spooky folklore behind Scooby-Doo, and his most recent release, Hallowed Ground, the folklore of churches and churchyards. Ruth E. St. Ledger Gordon was a journalist and folklorist and is perhaps best known for this book. If you'd like to read along, The Witchcraft and Folklore of Dartmoor is widely available used online and can be borrowed from the Internet Archive Open Library. I'm excited to jump into this month's episode with occult publishing legend Judika Illes to talk about the Russian classic, The Master and Margarita. But if you haven't read the book, a little background is going to be necessary. So about the author, Mikhail Bulgakov, this is from Wikipedia because that was the easiest thing to come up with today. Mikhail Bulgakov was a Russian and Soviet novelist and playwright. His novel, The Master and Margarita, which we're going to talk about, published posthumously, has been called one of the masterpieces of the 20th century. He also wrote the novel The White Guard and the plays Flight, which is also sometimes called The Run, and The Days of the Turbans. Flight, all of his works between 1922 and 1926, and others were banned by the Soviet government and personally by Joseph Stalin, after it was decided that they glorified immigration and white generals. On the other hand, Stalin loved Bulgakov's dramatization of the White Guard, anodyne renamed The Days of the Turbans. The Soviet leader reportedly attended the play at least 15 times, even calling a theater to personally demand its production after the playwright's fall from favor. Despite Stalin's intercession in this and other matters, Bulgakov was only briefly successful during his lifetime. After his death, especially once the publication of The Master and Margarita had been accomplished in 1966 or 67, his work was reassessed. He is now widely regarded as one of the great Russian authors of the 20th century. And a little bit about The Master and Margarita. Specifically, if you haven't read it, hopefully this will make it easier to follow our conversation. The Master and Margarita was written in the Soviet Union between 1928 and 1940. A censored version with several chapters cut by the editors was published posthumously in Moscow Magazine in 1966 and 1967 by his widow, Elena Bulgakova. The manuscript was not published as a book until 1967 in Paris, and a Samizdat version that circulated that included parts cut out by official censors, and these were incorporated into a 1969 version published in Frankfurt. And for folks who don't know what Samizdat was, it was basically hand-typed manuscripts that people in Soviet Union passed around of literature that had been banned. So that novel, that full novel with all of the Samizdat version was published in Frankfurt. That novel has since been translated into several languages and editions. The story concerns a visit by the devil and his entourage to the officially atheist Soviet Union. The devil manifested as one Professor Voland, challenges the Soviet citizens' beliefs towards religion and condemns their behavior throughout the book. The Master and Margarita combines supernatural elements with satirical dark comedy and Christian philosophy, defying categorization within a single genre. Many critics considered it to be one of the best novels of the 20th century, as well as the foremost of Soviet satires. And while I think that gives you an overview of the book, I found this little piece from an article in Lit Hub that I feel like gives a better idea of the experience of reading the book. And this is from an article called Life Got You Down, Time to Read The Master and Margarita by Viv Goroskop. Written in the 1930s, but not published until the 1960s, The Master and Margarita is the most breathtakingly original piece of work. Few books can match it for weirdness. The devil, Voland, comes to Moscow with a retinue of terrifying henchmen, including, of course, the giant talking cat, literally the size of a pig, a witch, and a wall-eyed assassin with one yellow fang. They appear to be targeting Moscow's literary elite. Voland meets Berlioz, influential magazine editor and chairman of the biggest Soviet writers' club. Berlioz believes Voland to be some kind of German professor. Voland predicts Berlioz's death, which almost instantly comes to pass when the editor is decapitated in a freak accident involving a tram and a spillage of sunflower oil. All this happens within the first few pages. So that may give you a better idea of the book. And then to talk about this book with me is Judika Illes. And she is a lifelong student, lover, and practitioner of magical arts. She's the author of numerous books devoted to spells, spirits, and witchcraft, including Encyclopedia of Spirits, as well as Pure Magic, Daily Magic, Encyclopedia of Witchcraft, Encyclopedia of Mystic Saints and Sages, and Magic When You Need It. She's been a professional tarot card reader for over 3 decades and is a certified aromatherapist. A native New Yorker, Judika teaches in the U.S. and internationally, virtually, and in person. And I'm so excited to welcome you, Judika. Thanks for being on WitchLit.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is like as you know, I was an English major, so this is very exciting.
Excellent. So the first thing I always ask people in this kind of format, in the format we have now, is why did you pick this book?
Oh, boy. I mean, that is a complex answer. I mean, the simple answer, long story short, is I love this book. It's one of my favorite books. And this book has really been a part of my life since my childhood. It is, for people who are not familiar with it, I do write about it. It is what the Wikipedia people won't tell you, and because scholars are not looking at it necessarily from my perspective. It's a witch book. It is a book about witches and what it means to be a witch. And I write about it from that perspective in my book, Encyclopedia of Witchcraft. If you are coming from an occult background, you will see different things in it. This book is often read, we were talking earlier, as a metaphor for, in the same way that the Crucible, people, which is also Arthur Miller's The Crucible, it's got witches in it. But if you say, I went to see The Crucible, somebody will say, it's really about, the McCarthy, communist hunting. But when you read it, if you read it without any context, it's about witches. And so is The Master of Margarita. I read the 1967 version when I was 7 years old. We had it as soon as it came out in English in my house because my parents were recent immigrants from the Soviet bloc, and it was very meaningful for them. And it had this wonderful cover with a black cat on it. And I read it, and I loved it. I was I learned to read when I was 3. My mother taught herself English by teaching me to read. And then every few years, I read it again. I read it again now to be sure I was familiar with it before we spoke about it. And every time I read it again, I see something else in it. Like now, my background, in addition to being an author, I'm a publishing professional. I've been an acquisitions editor for Wiser Books for 10 years in 2025. And there's so much publishing stuff in it too, which I don't think I caught, certainly not as a child. So I love this book. I could talk about this book all day. I warn you.
Good. No, that's excellent. Yeah, I had told you I hadn't read it, and it's been on like one of those my shame lists of books I need to read, and so it was really nice to actually sit down and read it. So it was good to have the reason to do it, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it. Like it, I was telling Judika earlier, listeners, that I first started reading the Penguin Classic version and immediately hated the translation. So I got about maybe a third of the way through, and then because time was nearing that I was going to have to talk about it, I went ahead and bought the audiobook from Libro FM of a much better translation and had just like the most dynamic narrator reading it. So then I just like listened to it all day while I was cooking or, going for a walk and just had this whole experience of being immersed in this book for like a whole day.
I mean, there are serious things in the book, but it's a lot of fun.
It's so darkly funny. I mean, the dark comedy aspect of it is not to be missed at all. Like it is darkly funny. And having lived in Slovenia, like I am not from the Soviet bloc, but I lived in Slovenia, which kind of wasn't really, Yugoslavia wasn't really part of the Soviet bloc in the same way.
Right, because Tito sort of kept us
but I mean, they definitely had communism and all of that. So like some of these things were familiar from my time there too. So it was, it was just deeply funny to read. It's deeply weird in the best possible way. It is 100% about witches. And the devil and, all of that. But so what, like, I'm curious, like when you read it as a child, like what really stood out? Do you still remember like what was the thing that stood out to you?
I mean, I will confess something that I have never confessed publicly.
Oh no.
And I don't know if you've ever read Foucault's Pendulum, Umberto Eco. I knew, which is a big book with a lot of occult and esoteric material in it. And I had a friend's wife, actually. And she told me she was reading it, and it sort of shocked me because this is the most mundane person with no interest in esoterica. And I said, "Are you finding this hard to difficult to understand?" And she said, "Oh, I just skip all those parts." And I was so appalled. But actually, I was a child, so I have an excuse. So the Master and Margarita is actually made up of two. There are two narratives within the book. Mm-hmm. One narrative is the devil has come to Moscow with his retinue and, has the book was allegedly the inspiration for the Rolling Stones' Sympathy for the Devil. He wants to be treated with politeness, which is something that is, there's not a lot of it in the Soviet Union at that time. And he dispenses rewards and punishments appropriately. And so there's that one book about his adventures, and it's very Faustian. There's a huge influence if you have read Faust or seen the operas based on it, or any of the other books that are based on Faust. It does resonate, but you don't have to have read anything. I certainly didn't as a child. So you have that, and then you have another narrative, which is Pontius Pilate in his encounters with Jesus. Mm-hmm. And they have nothing in common with the Gospels. So it's a fictional retelling, but I'm going to be very honest, I skipped all those parts.
Yeah.
I stuck to the Master and Margarita and the devil and all the wonderful characters he brings with him. So I do remember, and I read it now, and I find it very moving. Those sections that I am now old enough to appreciate.
Yeah,
I find it very moving. I just loved the story, and I loved witches. And if you love a traditional, I don't want to say a fairy tale witch, because I mean I liked the independence and defiance and the power of witches, and I felt that in the book at that time. Margarita, when she is transformed into a witch, and her Natasha, her compatriot, they're so powerful, and they're also generous and kind. They're not defamed. It's not. It is a book that celebrates witchcraft, and it is the other characters are repressed. I'm not talking about the devil and his retinue, but the people that he punishes and the people that are surrounded. They are repressed, and they're greedy, and they're badly behaved, and they're grasping. And the witches are the opposite. The witches are free and noble, and there are acts of generosity, extreme generosity. And I liked it. That certainly resonated with me. I don't think I could have articulated this at that time, but that resonated with me.
Yeah, you bring up the part where Natasha and Margarita become witches, and reading it, like one of the first is when it was like, oh, he wants to give her this like unguent to put on.
Yeah.
And she initially is like, I don't want any part of this. And then, he convinces her because she has her own motivations. I don't know how spoilery to be with like a 60-year-old book.
This book was published in 1967.
Yeah.
I think that, it's out there. What Victoria is talking about is, so Margarita has had this love affair with the master, the man we never know his name, an author that she calls the master. And he has vanished. He's an author, and he wrote something. Some of the passages about Jesus and Pontius Pilate are from his manuscript, and that has gotten him in trouble in Soviet Russia, and people who maybe try to advance themselves at the expense of others have really gotten him in trouble, and he has vanished.
And he wanted his apartment.
Yes, and who wanted his apartment, because this is for people who are not familiar with the housing issues. You should watch the movie Dr. Zhivago. I saw that as a child. People ask me what's the scariest horror movie you've ever seen. It's Dr. Zhivago for me, because it does portray. And I knew this for my family also, but it portrays some of the issues with housing at that time and in that place. So that is a big theme. People want. They want his great apartment with a garden. So it is different than Faust in that it is Margarita who makes the bargain with the devil, not a magician or a wizard. It's the woman Margarita, and she's depressed and she's lonely and she's sitting on a bench, and one of the devil's henchmen shows up and offers her what is essentially a jar of flying ointment, but she doesn't know it. And he's a stranger and he's weird. And she initially thinks he's trying to lure her into prostitution. And then who knows, it's such a strange guy on a bench is giving you a pot of cream, but he says all the right thing. And she decides she's going to do it. And that chapter, I remember chapter 21, it's called Flight. She anoints herself with this witch, this witch's cream, and she's able to fly. And it is like one of my favorite chapters in literature, is the freedom and the exaltation and the ecstasy of it. He expresses that, Bulgakov expresses that so well. The free people are the witches. She's able to get in a broom, and Natasha rides a transformed person who's now a pig, when pigs fly. It's great. And
yeah.
If I could choose one chapter, I like, if somebody asked me what's a great chapter to read, it's that one. It's perfect.
Yeah. There's so many little details in that chapter, like when the broom knocks on her door and comes in, so she has her broom to fly on. And just the description of them flying over Moscow and the Lake of Stars and flying to the moon, and then realizing she's going faster than the speed of light on this broom, and decides, no, I want to enjoy this. I want to see everything. And I was just like, yes, like you said, it was definitely this sparkly chapter in the middle of this book.
Oh my God, it's great. Bulgakov was born near Bald Mountain. If you have my Encyclopedia of Witchcraft, there is my Encyclopedia of Witchcraft is written in sections. There's a section on witches and literature, which is where the Master and Margarita is, but there is also a section on places that are associated with witches and witchcraft. And Bald Mountain, as in the Disney Fantasia.
Mm-hmm.
Bald Mountain is near Kiev, and he came from near there, and that is where witches' sabbats were held. And so it is if you are familiar, if you are coming from a witchcraft occult background, you will see this differently. Most people who analyze this are, students of Soviet Russia, analyzing what it meant in that context. But from a witchcraft, they're going to Bald Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna, fly and dance and feast, and very much a medieval era, because Bulgakov was not a witch. He may have known a lot of stories, but he was not a witch or a practitioner. So it is the medieval vision of what a witch's sabbat was. The devil is there. And the name Wolan derives from Wayland the Smith, from German mythology. So that is something that an occultist will notice, but other people will not notice. You will have your own insight into it. It's just fascinating. And, Azazello and Behemoth, they're all based on either biblical figures, angels. There's Abaddon, who rules one of the most ancient Jewish hells. So they're all sort of figures from myth and magic, and it's fabulous. I mean, I want to be at that party.
Yes.
In a way that when I read Faust, I don't want to be at that Sabbath. I have read Faust for that. Faust is in that book too. I have no desire to be at anything involved with there. I enjoyed reading it, but I don't want to go.
Yeah.
But this is like, I want to be. I want that flying cream.
Yes, exactly.
Better than any cosmetic.
Yeah. Well, and it also takes the age off her and makes her skin glow and just it transforms her. Not only just makes her able to fly, but it transforms her.
It removes all the worry lines.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything that every cosmetic cream has ever promised you. This actually delivers.
That's what it does. I was thinking about, we were talking about Bald Mountain, in the narrative about Pilate meeting with Yeshua and all of that, he refers to Golgotha as Bald Mountain in that part of the narrative. So there's all these tiny little weavings
Golgotha
between those
translates. Two. Yeah. Golgotha does translate to, the skull. So there are accuracies within a fictional context.
Yeah. And it's funny. I was thinking about if you didn't have his book, because I think we said this, but in the book, that those chapters are from his manuscript. That Margarita is I want this to be published. Part of her love for him is also she loves his work, and so she wants this to be published. And I was thinking about one of the things that Bulgakov does so beautifully, and I hope the translate. I wish that I could read it in Russian because I would love to see the original, but those tiny little things, all those little woven pieces from his book that are reflected, even in the characters themselves, you see the demons reflected in the characters that are around Pilate in the story. There's all these tiny little things that echo.
Right. Those sections about Pilate, are bound to offend. Lest anybody think that this is, there's a Christian aspect to this book, it will offend everybody.
Oh, Christians and non-Christians alike.
It will offend everybody. But I mean, it's because it is, Master gets in trouble for writing about religion at a time when they were not allowed to believe. It wasn't that people were atheists because they necessarily, I'm an atheist because I want to be an atheist. They were mandated to be atheists. This is the only proper political stance. But Pontius Pilate in the actual, and Woland, the devil, claims to have been there watching this. Jesus complains that Matthew, the author who, was the author of one of the Gospel of Matthews, is taking down what he says and he's getting it all wrong.
Yeah. Well, and to think I think it's interesting. One of the things I did appreciate about the Penguin Classic version, is there's so many translators notes in it.
Right,
And so
the
that is really
annotations.
great. And one of them was talking about how, like, in the 20s and 30s in the Soviet Union, there was this re-mythologicalization of Christ. Like, it was
Yes,
like they denied a historical Christ, but there was like a mythology of Christ. And this book somehow managed to make actual Christians and the Soviets mad because it threaded this
it
weird needle
enraged
of both of
everybody.
those things.
It reminded me a little bit of Rasputin also, because the reason Pilate does not want to crucify Jesus, and he tries to save him, but for selfish reasons. Jesus heals him, and he heals him mysteriously, and he is crippled by these blinding headaches, and he wants to maintain this healer's relationship, and that reminded me of Rasputin with the Russian royal family just before the Soviet Union. People can say what they liked about Rasputin, who was also, I think, an Encyclopedia of Witchcraft, but everything's in there. He healed Alexei, the prince, the Tsarevich. He healed him, and he often healed him long distance. So, regardless of what else you think about him or how you think he did it, well, he stopped so the prince has hemophilia, and he's able to stop his bleeding. He's able to heal the pain, stop his bleeding, and this makes the parents very, very dependent on him. And of course, he dies before they do. And so I saw a resonance in that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something I did not see, when I was a child, but now I see that. And I have to believe Bulgakov would have been aware of that.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know, there's something about rereading a book, especially one as layered and dense as this, like it just lends itself to rereading, because like the first time you read it, it's just like kind of absorbing everything. And then each time, like your lens is going to have changed. And I love that about books like this, that every time you reread it, you've changed as a person. The text hasn't really changed, but what you see in the text changes.
Although in this case, the text does change, because the published edition in 1967 was abbreviated.
Mm-hmm.
And then years later, so depending which, if you're in a used bookstore and you pick up a book, it may not be the same.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on, I find that more than most books, the translations really impact how the story comes. Some of the translations are funnier than others. It's a funny book, and I think that some of the translations manifest that more than others.
Apparently, there is a translation or an edition of a translation that has notes about all the parts that were cut out. Like it tells you, like this part was excised from that.
I'd love to read that.
I would love to read that one, and just see what it was that was in and out. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because this is a book that's been with you for so long, like, do you think it's changed you as a writer?
No, I don't think it's changed me as a writer. Maybe it helped me. It was a factor impacting how I became a writer or the way I write, but it hasn't changed me. The things that have changed are things. Having a great copy editor changed me as an author. I used to write. The copy editor who worked with me on Encyclopedia of Mystics, Saints, and Sages for HarperCollins, and also for the Weiserfield Guide to the Paranormal for Weiser Books, which was written under a pseudonym, but I wrote it. I happen to have had the same copy editor, and she really taught me to see. I had a tendency to write in a passive voice, but I didn't know I was doing it. I was just doing it. I'm a Cancer. I'm a sun sign Cancer, and sun sign Cancers, if you have a strong Cancer influence, we have a tendency to express ourselves in a crab-like manner, which means sideways. We're not necessarily direct. And she sort of showed me what I was doing and what I should be doing, and that helped me become a better writer. But I think that the books I have read that I loved, the Master and Margarita is not boring. And, and there are a lot of books that, like, you have to get through some boring stuff to get to the good part. But the Master and Margarita starts off right away. Right away. Like you don't have to wait. There's no explanation. You got these two guys in a park. Berlioz, the older prominent man, and he's got a younger writer who has who is also having trouble writing about religion and needs some help. And they're sitting there talking about this. And Woland, Mr. Woland, Professor Woland, who they don't realize is the devil, shows up, just starts right away. He starts messing with them. And they don't realize it. They're stiff and repressed. And he is very direct and he's funny and he's telling them stuff and they don't know how to deal with him. And he, predicts Berlioz's death. And they are not reacting in any of the right ways. And they don't know how to save them. They don't understand who he is and what he's saying. They have a narrative in their head that they're clinging to, and they can't see what's in front of them. And Berlioz's head is off within a few pages. So we get right to the chase. We don't actually meet Margarita until the second part of the book. Mm-hmm. You have to wait for that. But the part that we are going through before we get to her is interesting. It's exciting. You know, what's going to happen next? You can start to see, because as a reader, you're watching it. So the devil and his entourage are making their way through Moscow with all these encounters. And after a while, we can see, oh boy, this person's going to be in trouble, even though they can't see it. Yeah. So it taught me to get to the point, which I guess maybe I'm not doing now.
I like that. Speaking. No, I like that though. Yeah, I mean, I think there's, I don't know, like, I think, every author I've talked to has like those books that were like, this book made me want to be a writer, and this book, gives me agita when I read it, because I'm like, why am I not that writer? Like all of that. But coming to this one kind of late for me as an author, like I was like, oh, because I had read a lot of things that influenced him, I was like, oh, I see that.
Right.
I see the Faust, I see, all of those things in there, and just kind of that tradition of magical. I mean, this is actually a really early magical realism book in that kind of Eastern European Soviet tradition. So I think that was really interesting to me to see how magical realism, like at the time, they wouldn't have even called this a magical realism book. It was just weird.
Well, I always have a hard time with that, because I mean, I am a spirit worker. I walk with those spirits. I see them. And so I think if you're coming from that perspective, what if you go to the park one day and you sit on a bench and some spirit being sits down and starts conversing with you and has power? I mean, it goes. I mean, I think a lot of people accept that in theory, but to have it in reality is a shocking experience. So for anybody who's had a spiritual encounter, it's like being hit by lightning. And I thought he expressed that very well with Margarita. Margarita at some point because Margarita realizes who he is. Margarita realizes what she's dealing with, and she goes into it with her full heart. Because, and Margarita, her pact with the devil isn't for personal gain. She doesn't want to have a fortune. She doesn't want, she just wants to know if the master is alive. She wants to know if the master is alive, and she wants to help him. And he likes her. That was very meaningful for me. That may be a reflection of my family, my mother. It was very real to me. It's like Frida Kahlo, like who was classified among the surrealists, and she protested that this is my reality. It's not for me. It's not surrealism, and for me, this is. I find it plausible.
Yeah,
that you could have these experiences, these encounters that will impact you very directly.
Yeah, it again kind of goes back to that idea of like reading the book as the story. And then reading it as metaphor, and then reading it as, like criticism of the Soviet system, and Like there's so many layers to it, but just reading it as a book is beautiful.
It's like an onion. You're like peeling it and peeling it and peeling it. Yeah. And I think it's a book with a lot of depth, and what you bring to, I think it is impacted by what you bring to it as a reader. So are you familiar with the issues because you don't need to know anything. This book stands on its own. You don't have to have read Faust. You don't have to know about theology, Russian novels. You can just read this book as a book and enjoy it. But for people, I think it's recommended reading for people, Stalinism, Soviet era politics. And so if you're looking at it from that perspective, you're going to see things that maybe I'm not seeing. I am an occultist. I can't, that's not it's not that occultism is something I do. It's who I am. And I bring that with me. I talk a lot about how even as a child, I did not like the movie The Wizard of Oz. And The Wizard of Oz, I'm old. So, The Wizard of Oz was on TV once a year, and it was a big deal, and everybody watched it. And so, even in my family, it was on, people put it, somebody would turn it on, and I'd end up hiding behind the sofa because I did not like that movie. Because even when I was little, very little, earlier than 7, I understood that's a movie about killing witches. That is a movie where the witches look bad. The good witch looks like a fairy queen. She's, the pink and really she's mean. But it made me very, very uncomfortable. And this book, The Master and Margarita, is not like that. The witches, first of all, are people. And, they have good moods and bad moods, but they're not worse than that. And in a lot of ways, they're the heroines. It reminds me a little of, Serafina Piccola in the what's the book?
In his Dark Materials.
Yes, his Dark Materials, because she's also the heroine in a lot of ways, the savior.
I love the witches in that book. In that series, the witches in that series are fantastic.
Yeah. And Margarita is very much the savior in this book of anything. She helps people. She's generous. But she also, the guy who caused the master's downfall, she trashes his apartment really badly. And it feels no guilt. And I think that's she doesn't feel bad about it. That guy did something and he should pay.
And he does. The whole apartment building pays, really. And tells him everything will be okay, which is kind of reflected later again in the book with Homeless. There's this whole thing we haven't even talked about the model asylum and how all these people wind up in this model asylum with this very kind doctor who's basically drugging them all. Right. But that's a whole different,
true.
Different level of the thing. Yeah.
Which is, based on historical fact. It's not I guess that's the thing. It's not is this book a fantasy? Well, I guess if you think the devil walking around a city, punishing rude people is a fantasy, then it's a fantasy. But there's a lot of historical fact. This is, what they did with dissidents. They sent them to mental institutions or people who, for one reason or another, were inconvenient. They disappeared. People vanished.
Or they ended up in Yalta. That aspect of it. I think like you said, if you're looking at it from like Soviet era politics, like it is. And that was part of like how magical realism developed in the Soviet bloc, was to talk about these things that were happening in a way that was under the radar of the censors, even though I'm sure the censors knew exactly what they were talking about, which is why he got in trouble with this book. But it's all of those scenes with like the disappearing neighbors and ending up in the asylum and all of that was the reality. That there is no fantasy to that. That it was what was happening to people around him that he knew personally.
Yeah. And Margarita sits on the bench and Azazello sits next to her, and what she thinks proposition. She thinks he's going to get her arrested
Mm-hmm.
because people just people vanished.
Yeah. And there's like the whole thing with the foreign currency, like all of that, and like the, like all of those levels of like not having a place to live, and this like, when after Berlioz dies in the beginning of the book, that whole first half of the book is this obsession with who's going to get to his apartment, or even his room in the apartment, not even the whole apartment, just who's going to get his room in the apartment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the Primus stoves, which I had completely forgotten about.
Oh, you read about, I was just thinking of that. The description of Margarita, she has never touched a Primus stove because people have these shared kitchens. And so you bring your, the equivalent of a hot plate to cook on. It's like in college, people sneaking in their hot plates,
Yeah. Because she has this beautiful house with this husband. And it's so interesting to me, like, several of the commentaries I read said, that the master is kind of Bulgakov's stand-in in this book. But I was like, Margarita's husband is also like kind of him, because he was a doctor before and like kind of gave up this very safe way to be in the Soviet Union as this, physician and in the country, and then
for a prominent family,
to be a writer, and then to be a dissident because of that.
And Margarita's, ends up as a stand-in for the widow Elena, because she spent, she's the one who gets the novel published.
Yeah,
she's the one who never gives up on it. After he dies, it becomes her life's mission to make sure that his book isn't forgotten. So, he knew, Bulgakov knew what would happen.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be easy to talk about this book all day.
No, it's a very profound book with very many levels. We are here on WitchLit, so it is my focus with the book too. It is. I don't read Margarita and Woland and Hella, as metaphors, but you could if you wanted to.
Right.
I appreciate that they could be read as metaphors. The first time I read it, I didn't know what a metaphor was. So I could only read it, as it was presented on the page, and that reflects my life.
Right.
But if you have a different kind of a life and a different perspective, you might, you would still enjoy this book. You would still find things in this book.
Yeah, I think so too. Did this book lead you to other books in your reading? Was it a gateway book?
Victoria, no. I am a compulsive reader, and I have been since I started. It's like a drug. I am the person. If I am sitting, I'm sitting here now surrounded by books. But if I am sitting someplace and I have nothing to read, I'm the one who will read the back of the cereal box.
Same.
It's compulsive for me. So I don't know that it led me to anything else. I read this before I read Faust. I read, and there's Mephisto. Is it by Thomas Mann or another man? Mann?
Yeah, I think so.
I read Mephisto. There was a movie made of it, which is great. I read Mephisto. I read Faust. But I read those as an adult, or a young adult. This, I read it in the wrong order.
Well, maybe not. Is there a wrong order? I don't know.
Well, if I had been assigned this in a classroom, they would have had me read Faust first.
Right.
No, it's a book I love, a book I feel part of, and I feel the book is part of me. And maybe it helped confirm visions of witches and witchcraft that I had. People will ask me, why are you so interested in witchcraft? I don't know. I don't know. I arrived in this incarnation this way. I have, at one time, many, many years ago, I don't know if they still do this. The first time I submitted a book proposal to Llewellyn Books in the late 90s, and you had to submit your chart with it. And I have a good, which was not stressful for me because I have a good witch's chart. Like, you look at my chart, and go, you're into witchcraft. Yeah, well, yes, I am. Um, uh, so there is a lot of defamation about witches. A lot of things. I was lucky enough as a child to be seen Bewitched as it came out, to have seen the Addams Family when it first came out. So I did see positive depictions, which was rare. Had I been born 10 years earlier, maybe I wouldn't have. And I had a mother and a sister who, although not practitioners, were interested. They were interested, and they sit with an open mind. My mother would tell me about spells that she was taught way back in her childhood, in what is now a village in Slovakia, by older people. She spent a lot of time with, people in the household, and they would tell her, when you're a child, treat you a little bit like a puppy, like in the way that you go about your business with a puppy in the room, and you don't have to censor yourself in a way that you might censor yourself if there was another person.
Right.
You don't want them to know what you're doing. But hey, a puppy in the room. I was raised like that too. People talked in front of me like I might as well have been a puppy. They didn't explain anything. They didn't. But if I was in the room, they just kept talking. And my mother had a similar experience. So I liked witchcraft, the positive aspects of witchcraft being reinforced. Witchcraft as the antithesis of repression. Freedom, liberation, the ability to do good for other people. That was very much reinforced for me. And the ecstasy. People don't talk about that a lot. But the aspect of practicing, everything's sort of very practical now. Why are you casting a spell? Well, because I want this or that or that. Or I'm casting a spell because it's Samhain, so I'm going to do it. But the pursuit of ecstasy and the achievement of ecstasy, that I think is an important aspect of witchcraft. And in that book, that is part of Margarita's experiences, because Margarita finds herself, Margarita starts off as any other Soviet person. She doesn't believe in any of this. And then she has these experiences, and it happens to her, and she's transformed. And she realizes she's never going back. She can't go back once she's had. She can't be an ordinary person again, because now she's a witch.
Yeah.
And I did like that. I understood that part.
I love that. Kind of toward the end, where she tells the master, when they're back in his apartment, that I changed everything for you. Like I gave up what I had been to become a witch, to come for you.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yes, you did
everything willingly, without knowing what's going to happen. And she achieves her power.
Yeah.
And I think that appealed to me a lot.
Yeah. And I love it that he doesn't correct her. He just says, you're right, and I will never doubt you again.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason she loves him.
Yeah.
I would say in that book, my favorite characters, what hooked me, Margarita, and, to a lesser, Natasha, her sort of sidekick.
I love Natasha.
Only a little bit, but she's so much fun. And the cat.
The cat.
I was a cat crazy child. And you've got this talking black cat who drinks vodka with gilded whiskers and is a short shot. And I wanted that cat.
And tries to get on a tram.
I didn't care.
Tries to get on a tram.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's it. When you see something magical, they don't stop. They're not. There is a talking black cat, huge black cat, walking on his hind legs. And they're treating it like it's just another occurrence. That inability to stop in awe of a miracle. It's magic.
Yeah. And to me, that is its own kind of satire, when the woman doesn't let him on the tram because she's like, no cats. And this is a cat standing on his hind legs trying to give you money. Right. And you say no cats.
Right,
Like,
right. Like it's just
okay.
right. Like it's just a cat sneaking onto the train. I know.
And it's like, okay, this is the essence of like magical
But
realism to me,
but
is
there
that
are people like that. I mean, I see it all the time. Something amazing has happened and we're just not seeing
mhm.
it. I mean, that kind of bureaucratic mindset that refuses to break out of those boundaries. There is a cat trying to give me money. This is amazing. And talking.
And yet you're just being your diplomat, your bureaucratic self, not letting the cat on the tram.
Right.
But yeah, and I think, it's funny to me because it goes back to this idea that I've kind of like, I guess, grappled with over the course of my life, is like this idea that we need to re-enchant the world. And I'm like, the world was never unenchanted.
Right. Right.
We stopped seeing it,
Right.
but the world has always been enchanted.
Right. It's there. Right.
Yeah.
Right. No less. We're just not. Well, it's this insistence on maintaining a narrative, even when everything else around you tells you otherwise. No cats on the train. But here is I mean, I think the cat even has some clothes on. The cat walks in, he's got money, he's talking to you, he's trying, and these are not like Fantasia with the pink elephants. I mean, this is, you're not intoxicated. This is happening. Other people are seeing the cat too. And just, well, no cats, and, we don't let animals on the train.
I do love when he gilds his whiskers
Oh,
to
me
go
too.
to the ball. Like that whole scene is lovely.
Me too.
But,
I
yeah.
love when Azazel, who's based on, the angel Azazel, he's been sent to bring Margarita, who has already made this pact, but she doesn't, he has been sent to bring her to Woland, the devil figure. And he's having a hard time with it. So they should have sent, they should have sent the cat because the cat is a charmer.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I do. I mean, his whole retinue, like even Hella, who we get so little of, really.
I know.
She's
I
fascinating. Like, I really would like more of her.
Oh, I wish we had more. And I always assumed that, well, because, Azazel is also associated with the afterlife. I mean, that's from some Jewish mythology. And Hela, I assume, is the Hela who rules the afterlife in Norse mythology, Germanic mythology. I mean, and those are all cultures that Bulgakov would have been familiar with. Clearly he was familiar with Faust, familiar with Germanic mythology. Yeah, I am sure that that is who is, and Wayland, the Anglo-Saxon pronunciation. So and there is a description of Wayland. I'm selling it. I don't think this is the book I'm supposed to be selling today, but Encyclopedia of Witchcraft. He is the legendary smith of Germanic and Anglo-Saxon mythology, and smithcraft was also associated with the devil.
Mm-hmm. The fires and yeah.
Yeah. Long story short, but he also dispenses punishment and rewards to the perpetrators.
Yeah.
Perpetrators of evil.
Yeah. And I mean, that is Volan's role in this book, is he's basically dispensing punishment to the bureaucrats and the false writers and all of this stuff. The part though with that, like, because you get because the book opens in Patriarch Park, or I can't remember.
Patriarch's Park. Patriarch's Pond, maybe.
Pond, yeah. And then you have this character, Ivanovich, who's homeless. No, that's not Ivanovich. Ivanovich is her neighbor. What is his name?
I cannot always keep
he's basically homeless. They call him homeless in the book because his name means
his nickname,
homeless. This is his nickname in the book.
Yeah.
He's a poet and he's trying to write about the same thing that the master wrote about, and he's getting flack for it in the same way. But he ends up in this ideal asylum, in the gentle asylum or whatever.
Right.
But we do get him again at the end. And that idea that he has this life after all of this stuff is forgotten, and he's returned to life and he's married. And But every full moon, he has this little breakdown and he goes and sits outside and imagines all of these things that he knows happened. Like in his brain, he knows happened. But then he goes home and his wife drugs him and he goes to sleep. And I was like,
they're also grateful for being drugged.
Yeah. And I was like, this is kind of a metaphor for what happens when people have these huge life events they can't absorb. Like when you have a moment where you see through the veil of our disenchantment and you can't synthesize it.
And from a literary perspective, I mean, you just made me think because, the Master has written this novel about Pontius Pilate and Jesus, the last days of Jesus, and its effect on Pontius Pilate. And Homeless is also sort of these thoughts are percolating with him. And I think that sometimes books want to be born.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people, if you have a book in your head, you should write it.
Yeah.
Write it. Because if you won't write it, maybe that book will travel to somebody else. It wants to manifest. It wants to come into the world. So if it's in you, you should try to get it out.
Get it out.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I've had that thought. I've had the book, and then like a month later, I'll see somebody is.
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah, definitely.
Like, nope. That was just looking for a home.
Well, the books have a life of their own. The books have a life of their own. So, I mean, I think the Master and Margarita also has had a life of its own. Bulgakov wrote it, destroyed it, attempted to publish it, gave up on publishing it. His widow never gave up. But that book, I think the book wanted to be born. Not to be too animistic about this, but I think the book was really striving. What does he say? Something to the effect of literature can't be destroyed or books can't be destroyed.
Yes, that Wolin tells him when he says, I can't show you the book because I burned it. And he's like, but manuscripts can't be burned, which is again from Faust. And this idea that you can't burn the manuscript.
Yes.
And but it also made me think about like that this book existed as samizdat, which was huge in the Soviet Union. Yes. I mean, it was sometimes books that had been written by Soviet authors, and it was sometimes books from other places that someone had meticulously typed out a copy or translated themselves into Russian of other literature that had been banned. And so this book had this whole like egregore life before it even was published as a book.
And that's the history of a lot of grimoires also.
Mm-hmm.
Books that were illegal, you could not publish them. They might kill you if you publish them. And so you have all these handwritten manuscripts, that are attributed to King Solomon and Pope Honorius and a sort of other people, and they're passed around and different people copy them. And so you have like three versions that are three extant manuscripts that survive, and none of them are exactly the same, whether by choice or by error. And so there is that magical aspect to it. I mean, that's for centuries. These grimoires, I worked as an editor, I worked on Sarah Mastros's Sorcery of Solomon,
mm-hmm.
in which she, what's the word? She rectified the Pentacles of Solomon because they were published, through all these handwritten, also by people who couldn't understand them.
Mm-hmm.
There were errors. And we
and like the transcription of the Jewish and the Hebrew alphabet and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Or whether accidentally or because people were doing their best and didn't know what they were seeing or didn't understand it. It's like I read The Master and Margarita and I recognize that Woland. I know where that name comes from.
Mm-hmm.
It's something you rarely see in interpretations because it's not a consciousness. People, many educated people have read Faust, so they recognize that. And they recognize Azazello because that's in the Bible. So they, even though they don't know the details, they recognize. I like how he made it Italian, though. I like how he added
there's like all these little twists to it that I think are great. And that behemoth is also the Russian word for hippopotamus, even though it's also like a demon from the,
Well, that's also from the Bible. The behemoth and the Leviathan are these two marvelous creatures. And it in the description Leviathan is described as this gigantic whale-like creature, and the behemoth as a hippopotamus-like creature, which, makes me think of Egyptian mythology and the goddess Taweret, who I love, who is also, a hippopotamus woman with, a crocodile's tail and a male lion's mane, walking on, on her hind legs. She's wonderful. And, human breasts. And I mean, she's just fabulous.
Yeah.
And so, how much of that did Bulgakov know? And how much of it I sometimes have found myself writing things that turn out to be correct or turn out to be related to something. I did not know that at the time I wrote that. I did not consciously know it.
Yeah.
So how much of that, I mean, unfortunately, Bulgakov is not here for us to ask, because, I mean, that would be a great conversation.
Well, and I do think there's like a synchronicity that happens too. Like that there's that saying, like, nothing's lost on a writer. And I think also nothing's forgotten either.
Yeah.
Like, we absorb so much and like all of that comes out. And like you said, like, maybe I didn't consciously remember that or have seen it or something, or it relates to something I've read. And then you find it later, like time is a circle kind of thing.
Yeah. Time is a circle. Time is a flat circle. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I don't know if they still say this, but when I was a child, we would periodically get lectured about, people only use 10% of their brains. But I don't actually think that's true. I think we understand how we use 10% of our brain. But the other 90%, something is going on there. We just might not understand it. So I think sometimes it's like a filing cabinet. We're pulling stuff out. We don't know where it came from.
Which is interesting, like writing the kind of books that you write and the kind of book that I just submitted, is that because there's so much detail in it. And it's like, I do want to go check myself. Do I actually know this? Right, am I just imagining this? And then I have to go down a rabbit hole of research to go, oh no, I still don't know how I knew it, but I was right.
Yeah, no, me too. And I mean, it's like, I read an interview with Van Morrison once, the songwriter, the musician, the singer, and he said something to the effect that he doesn't write his songs, he receives them, and he channels them. I'm paraphrasing, but something to that effect.
Yeah.
And I mean, there is an aspect of that, although I am a pretty meticulous researcher, and I double check, triple check, quadruple check when I can. But every once in a while you can't. Every once in a while there's something, and then a few years later you do find that double check, and it's correct. That's a very gratifying thing.
Yeah, and for me, there's a real difference between writing fiction and nonfiction. Like in my fiction, it feels very channeled.
Yes,
I do research things for it too, but
it
does feel more channeled. And then nonfiction feels more like my brain wrestling with stuff it wants to know or already knows. Yeah. But I was thinking about the Master and Margarita as a grimoire. And because you have written this giant book on spells, and you've written about witchcraft, and you've written all that, do you have a spell from this book that you can, have you looked at it that way, or?
No, but no, I am going to, now that you said it, I'm going to look at it that way. I think the flying ointment, and he doesn't, in the book.
I think he describes the smell, but not anything in it.
It's swampy.
It's swampy and like of the earth.
It's herby and swampy. Well, in the book, he hands her this jar, and she doesn't know what it is. And it's very illicit. And it's not clear. And when she first puts it on, so I mean, he tells her what to do with it and how to apply it.
Mm-hmm.
And
get completely naked.
Yeah, at a certain time. And she does it. And her first instinct is she sees he tells her, he tells her that she's aged a lot in the last 6 months. Grief has aged her, and which hurts her feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And she starts to apply this cream, and she can see the effects immediately. And I mean, they're very striking. Her eyebrows, which have been plucked too thin, kind of rejuvenate immediately.
Yeah.
And so it's very I mean, that's the thing with spells. Spells in movies come with a lot of bells and whistles and smoke, but often a spell in real life can be very anticlimactic when you're done. You did it and you're tired. Did it work? And it may take a little time to, every once in a while you'll know right away, but some spells take a little while for you to know, did it work or do I have to do something else? So she doesn't, but it's immediate. She sees the cosmetic changes and she feels exultant, but she doesn't, all of a sudden she starts sort of levitating. She's lighter. And that is a shock to her. But if you are coming out of a witchcraft background, and if you've read, or if you've just read Faust, you know right away that what he's given her is flying ointment.
Yeah.
It's what the witches were supposed to put on before the Sabbath. Whether or not they can actually fly, or now people will say, well, these are ointments that would give you the sensation of flying, or that would induce hallucinations that made you think that you were going to Bald Mountain. And in my book, Encyclopedia of 5,000 Spells, I do have some of the formulas for these ointments. You have to be careful with these. I mean, and you'll find them published elsewhere. I mean, you can go online and find them. A lot of the listed ingredients of these ointments are very toxic. They could kill somebody. So did people know is this not the real recipe? Are they leaving something? Is it like a chef writing a cookbook where they leave something out? The buffering agent?
Yeah.
Or is it like, coded? Were these not actual things? Was this made up? I mean, because we don't have reports of, oh yeah, she put the flying ointment and then she dropped dead.
Yeah.
Because, some of these recipes, I say that with caution. Some recipes you would. And, people sell flying ointment right now, and you need to read those ingredients because you need to make sure you are purchasing something from a reputable herbalist who knows what they're selling you. And, maybe you will have a visionary experience, but, you don't want someone to give you something that will cause you to go to the hospital.
Right.
And not have a good time on the Sabbath.
Yeah. I always think about, it's like, were they really flying? Did they just imagine they flew? Did it give them the sensation? I was like, it kind of makes me think of the chaos magician thing about it's happening in your head. You just don't realize how big your head is,
Right.
It's like, does it matter?
Does it matter?
It's the experience.
Or is it a shared, is this something that if you are with people and you do it ritually, that you're doing it together? I mean, that's the question. When you dream of someone, are they also, I know that, I've had dreams of someone and they've also had mutual dreams, like you're dreaming with someone. So that's a possible thing. So is your coven of 13 people having this, if you've prepared for yourself, are you on Bald Mountain dancing together? Even, there are a lot of ways of doing that.
Yeah, I like it.
And Master and Margarita, she does. She has to learn how to control her weightlessness and also her, how to maneuver this broom. And he as Azella tells her, it takes some time to learn. But I think about Saint Teresa of Avila, doctor of the church, who would reputedly levitate, and she and was throughout her life was suspected by the Inquisition of witchcraft. Something that the hagiographies don't always tell you. And she would get her sister nuns to hold her down so that she didn't go flying off publicly.
I do love the part when she finally, after she has her revenge and she learns to control the broom, and then she meets this other retinue at the river, these people she knows she's never going to see again. And they're like, how did you get here? And she's like, I came on a broom. It's like, oh, and he calls her a car, but the car flies. And I was like, I loved that.
I did too. And then the car flies.
Mm-hmm.
People are always so they people, I guess, who do not read or watch earlier things get very excited about the flying cars in Harry Potter. But I Married a Witch has a flying car. The movie from the 40s has a flying car. And Master and Margarita, written before that, has a flying car. So I think ever since there have been cars, people have been thinking about, you know, how do you take off?
Well, I mean, cars and planes happened pretty close together, and I think it's
right,
easy to forget that those technologies came
right,
kind of close together.
right.
So it kind of makes sense,
right,
you
right.
know.
But people, I get a lot of jokes from people, oh, where's your broom? And I always think that given the choice, I would rather have the magic carpet.
Yeah.
It's like
A little
that looks
easier
comfortable
on your body.
Oh yeah, you could have beverages. You could easier on you physically, and you could have like stuff around you. You could just carry a broom on the magic carpet. You don't have to write it. You could just keep it with you.
Yeah, I like that idea. Oh, so now I'm now stuck on this idea of this book as a grimoire in a weird way.
That's really interesting. Maybe you should write that.
I don't know, maybe. And now I've put it out in the world. But yes, but I do think, I mean, it is funny to me.
Book, I will write a foreword for that book.
Sounds good. But I have read a lot of kind of witchy fiction that I am like, this is also a grimoire. Like The Witches of New York. Have you read The Witches of New York?
Yeah. It's on my, I have a huge list. I have a huge stack of books to read. It's in there.
Because there's so much of that book. I mean, and more explicit because of the nature of the book. I mean, yeah, exactly. You should read this book. But I do love her writing, and I love that book. And I've often thought, I mean, I have lots of little tapes in it because like, this is kind of a spell here, like, and I was like, yeah, okay. So, but this one I'm like, there's no, like you said, Bogogov wasn't a practitioner. So there's no like overt spells. But there's so much magic in it.
Right.
With the witches, with his retinue of demons.
Even if he just learned it from other people, he enjoyed it and he knew. I mean, the painter John William Waterhouse, we have very little information about him, but his witch paintings are so detailed and so accurate.
Yeah.
People wonder, was he a practitioner? Yeah. We don't know.
I'm kind of obsessed with the pre-Raphaelites for kind of that reason.
Oh, yeah.
I always try to explain to people there was this time in the 90s when the pre-Raphaelites and witches were like inseparable, and they don't always believe me. And I'm like, no. Like you could get mouse pads with like pre-Raphaelite things on them because everyone was obsessed.
Oh, yeah. I remember.
And like it was on all all these pre-Raphaelite paintings were witchcraft book covers.
On the screensaver on my phone, I had Circe and Vidiosa, the painting, it's the Waterhouse painting of Circe standing, about to poison the waters, cast a spell through the waters. I had that on my phone forever. I love that painting.
Yeah. I always think that one, and now the one I see everywhere is the Goya painting of the witches instead.
Oh, yeah.
With the bull. And I'm like, it's funny to me that how like that changes. And I think it happens in literature too. Like I think people get obsessed with like certain paintings or eras of paintings kind of in the witchcraft movement, and then books will kind of surface like and just because of the podcast, like I've had like and I'm sure you've seen this too in your work, it's like there's these crests of things, like there's so many tarot books right now, like the tarot seems to really be having this like publishing moment.
Oh my god, yeah.
And then that wave will crest into something else.
It's very difficult though because it's overwhelming. If you want to get a book and you don't know, you don't have a recommendation and you don't know where to start, it's like, the tarot card, the Seven of Cups, it's too much. Where do you start?
Yeah, and the episode that will have come out right before this, the previous episode, I've recorded a lot together because I'm going to be gone, but we're talking about Rachel Pollack's 78 Degrees of Wisdom in the episode before this one. So, but it's interesting, like and all the books that reference her book now.
I edited. I was her editor.
I didn't know that. I did know that.
Yeah, not for that book. I'm editing one of her books now, actually, which may be out by I don't know. It'll be out by the time this airs, but not long afterwards. Not 70 Degrees of Wisdom, which I read. I mean, there are moments in my life, you have moments where you have to pinch yourself, like, is this real?
Yeah.
But working with Rachel Pollack, I mean, that I edited A Walk Through the Forest of Souls. I edited Shining Tribe.
Oh,
And we are
wow.
working on a book now. It is that was originally published 40 years ago, Tarot and Open Labyrinth, and that has not been available for a very, very, very long time. And so that we'll be doing a new edition of
Oh,
that.
wow.
Yeah, no, one of the joys of my life, like totally was working with Rachel Pollack, and she was amazing. She was amazing and brilliant. And I recommend to people to read A Walk Through the Forest of Souls,
Mm-hmm.
which is a book about tarot.
Yeah.
That's it's a tarot journey, and it's a big book. And reading it is like speaking with Rachel, because she was just so mind-blowingly brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Not just plain old brilliant, but like
Yeah.
amazingly brilliant. And reading that book to me is very much about having that experience with her. She was just, how can people be so brilliant? But she was.
Yeah, that's what we talked about in the episode. Folks will have just heard this, maybe. I don't know. But it's like there's so many layers to her writing, because she just had so much knowledge of literature
Right.
and tarot history and like everything. And then in her fiction, it's the same way. There's so many layers to her writing, but she always trusts her reader.
Right.
Like she doesn't ever talk down to her reader. And it
Yeah,
is one of
right.
those things that I think makes her even more brilliant, because it's so easy for
Right.
writers to forget and to either over explain because they don't trust their reader, or to not connect what they're writing to reality because they then assume everyone knows what they know. And she
Well,
threads that needle so
speaking
beautifully.
speaking as an editor, I mean, that is a very common error, especially with people who write specialized books like Esoterica, because in our daily lives, we speak with people who can follow our conversations and who understand our terminology, and who maybe we have a lot of shared passions with. And if you are communicating with people, I tell writers, people who can find you on Facebook or who know enough to take your classes, they know enough that they want to learn from you. But books go out into the world and we don't know where they're going. And they could reach anybody. Whoever you think your reader is, you shouldn't limit yourself. It could be anybody.
Yeah.
And maybe this is the first book of this kind they have read. So you have to not exclude them.
Mm-hmm.
You have to. I think Rachel was brilliant at that.
Yeah.
Rachel explained just enough so you could follow along with her. And she would recommend where you would go next if you wanted. Mm-hmm. But she also didn't dumb it down.
Yeah.
She shared, her brilliance, that shining mind that she had. We're her shining tribe. If anybody, the shining tribe deck it's an expensive deck, but it's beautiful. And our version, I describe it as the director's cut, because it had been published before, but she wasn't happy with the colors. She wasn't happy with the title. The things got changed, and we did it. It was what we were working on just before she passed away.
Mm-hmm.
We did it as she wanted it to be. And got this huge book. It's got a book that stands alone. So, I mean, it's expensive for a reason.
Yeah.
She did all the artwork. She wasn't an artist, but I've always admired that so much. She saw something in her head, mm-hmm. and she did it. As opposed to, I'm not an artist, therefore I have to get an artist. She became an artist. Like, Margarita becomes a witch. She became an artist for this. And it's just brilliant. And it is called Shining Tribe because we are her Shining Tribe. And who doesn't want to be part of the Shining Tribe?
Yeah, really.
I want to be part of the Shining Tribe.
Exactly. Well, we've talked about your work as an editor a lot, but let's talk about what you're working on right now and what you, I will say Wiser was very generous, and I got sent a lot of stuff because you have a lot of stuff coming out. So I got a copy of the Witch's Compendium, and then you very graciously sent me the Encyclopedia of Witchcraft. And then also Aaron sent me the new Oracle deck, the Magic Spells Oracle deck.
So, the protection spells or the magic spells?
The magical spells Oracle.
Oh, wow. You're the first person I know to have it.
Yeah, it's lovely. I've really enjoyed it. I do a daily card pull, and it's been really nice to have that, and then kind of that be the theme for whatever my morning pages is that morning. So it's really been a nice deck to work with that way.
Oh, I'm so happy because it's just sort of starting to trickle out now. So when I started writing, I wrote 2 books that, people think 5,000 Spells is my first book. It's not. I wrote 2 books, books on spells. The first book, Earth Mother Magic, has been reissued as Pure Magic, which is a course in spell casting. So if anybody is listening to this and doesn't know what a grimoire is, or how to cast a spell, or what is a spell, it's in there. It's non-judgmental. It won't tell you what to believe. You can believe whatever you want, but it will tell you how to become a magical practitioner. And then I wrote 4 encyclopedias, long story, in a row. And then I was very tired, and I took a break and went to work for Wiser as an editor. And in the last year, it's recommended, authors know it's recommended you don't publish too many things at once. But in the last year, I accidentally, without any intention, published 3 things. The third one is just coming out in the space of 12 months. One of them is Witches, a Compendium, which is a celebration of witches, because I love witches. And it's written for people who also love witches, or maybe people who are a little scared of witches. And, I want you to know more. So if you're going to be scared, you should be scared for the right reason, not the wrong reasons, because there's a lot of wrong reasons to be scared of witches. And I have in the last year become a deck creator, which makes me very happy. I was just telling someone I have to amend my biography because I used to say I was an author and an editor, but I'm an author, a deck creator, and an editor. So I published Protection Spells, which is a little, it's a odd little book on protection, odd little deck on protection magic. It's very reasonably priced, and if you want to learn about protection magic, you can learn from the deck, or you can pull cards for yourself. You can use it as an oracle deck. The author Elisa Einhorn has been putting out videos of how she's reading from protection spells. She's reading the backs of the cards, which I find fascinating.
Oh, wow.
They're full of snakes and moons, which are 2 of my favorite things. And I now have Magic Spells Oracle, which will be coming out, I think, around the time of this interview.
Yeah.
And that is continuation of 5,000 Spells, I think. It is an oracle deck and a more formal oracle deck. It does have a book. Protection Spells doesn't have a book, but this one has a book. It's original material, and it makes me want to write a book on elemental magic. So I did this with it was sort of a co-production between Wiser and HarperCollins UK, which published my first 2 encyclopedias were published in the UK first by HarperCollins UK. And they wanted to do an oracle deck divided into elemental cards with balancing cards. And they, we went to work on this, and we, did it very intensively and very, very sort of quickly and intensively. And it made me want to just write more about elemental magic, which, who knows? I have
I like the way it's organized for people when they get it. If they've pre-ordered it, they may have it by the time this comes out. If not, if you go look at it, it has 4 suits of the elements, and then each of those has it. And this morning I pulled Lapis Lazuli. It's my morning pull. And I like how simple they are. That's one of my things with Oracle decks that I really enjoy is when they are like a single image.
Yeah.
Because you bring whatever you already know to it, and then what the deck creator gives you, and then you can go beyond that if you want to go look it up in like a lapidary or something too.
I think this is not uncommon for those who identify with witches or magical practitioners. We're very independent people, and we like to do things the way we like to do them.
Right.
And so it is very hard when you are given something with a lot of rules and regulations, and this is what this means, and it has to mean this. And I didn't want that. I wanted to leave it open because, as soon as you said lapis lazuli, I mean, that has meanings for me. And it might have different meanings for you and for somebody else. But yeah, no, it was very exciting working on this. I never, not that I didn't want to create cards, but I didn't actually think it would necessarily happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked very hard to get published as an author. I have a lot of rejection stories. The drawer full of rejection. So, I mean, I certainly have that. When I wrote my first book, I had a lot of despair about ever being published. But these decks just sort of miraculously appeared. And that brings me a lot of joy. It makes me very happy. And who knows, maybe there might even be another deck in the future.
Well, there you go. I like it. Well, and I love that. I mean, I feel like it kind of is in that, like we were talking about, there's kind of this moment. Like, I feel like people are really, even people who maybe are leery of witchcraft will get an oracle deck or a tarot deck.
I went to a book convention with, when I first started working at Weiser with one of our salespeople. It was in Savannah, Georgia. It was a Southern Booksellers Association. I don't remember the exact name. And it's a booksellers association. It's nothing pagan or witchy or anything. It's just people who own bookstores, a con. And I was set up, we were reading tarot cards. I was reading tarot cards, and we had a line out the door. People who had never actually touched a tarot card or seen a tarot card, or, and it was very profound. I've been reading cards for a long time, and I have read in stores. I used to read in a store across the street from Union Square in New York City every Saturday. It's a tourist place, and so I would read for anybody. So, I'm good with that. Like, I don't care. I'll read for you, whatever. If you want to have a reading, I'll read for you. It was just very profound, the impact it had on people. Mm-hmm. So that was, it's a very strong memory for me. But I think oracle cards, well, there's a lot of different kinds of oracle cards, and some of them are kind of very sunny and cheerful, and affirmation cards. What's your affirmation for the day?
Yeah.
And these are, I'm not a sensational person. I don't try. I mean, I have certainly at times of my life had a lot of fear. And I know what that feels like. I try not to scare people.
Yeah.
I don't panic easily. People become very panicky, like, oh, Ouija board, that's bad. This is something else that's bad. But, let's explore why do you think bad? And if you're scared, what can you do to keep yourself safe? Which is a little bit of protection spells. Mm-hmm. How do you keep yourself safe? It's a good deck for if you are feeling uneasy, pick a card, and maybe it will give you something to do rather than to sit there and be scared.
No, I like that. Oh.
Magic Spells Oracle, I think, makes me, you're the first person to tell me that they're actually using it. So that makes me very happy.
Well, I'm excited. I did not realize I was an early adopter, but I'll take it.
Yeah. I didn't realize they were already sending them out. I mean, that makes me very happy.
Yeah, I had contacted Erin because she had sent out. Erin is the PR person at Weiser, in case anyone wonders who's the Erin person we're talking about.
Publicity.
But had sent an email with these are authors coming out, and it was the deck. And I said, and I emailed her back and I said, Judika and I have this scheduled. Is it possible to get a review copy of this? And then it showed up in the mail 2 days later. So,
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. I mean,
it's one of the joys of having a podcast.
Yeah, no, that makes me really happy too. I mean, this is totally I knew we were going to talk with the Master and Margarita. Yeah. I totally didn't know you had seen that deck because I have one copy. Mm-hmm. It was airlifted to me.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I would have one advanced copy. So
yeah.
That's just great. I wanted that to be empowering.
Yeah, and it's beautifully done too. I mean, for folks who haven't seen it yet, just the colors, I just really enjoy it. And the first card I pulled the first day I worked with it was the cat.
Oh, that makes me cry.
I love.
Really, I love that. Yeah, I worked with the editor. I mean, I picked I sort of picked the different card names, and so
yeah. And the cat image, people see it when they get their own deck, but has kind of like a third eye, and it's like the cat's kind of walking away from you with their butt up in the air, and there's a moon on their butt. So it's kind of it's very
my
cat.
favorite.
It's very cat.
Cats and moons and snakes. I mean, dogs too. I mean, I love them all.
Yeah.
Birds.
Oh no, it's a lovely deck. And
I'm so glad.
Yeah. So what is next for you, I guess, is the question.
I don't know.
That's a good answer too.
I do have some plans for another deck, but that's still very early. Mm-hmm. Still very early in its stage of development. I have a lot of books in my head. That I'd like to write. Hopefully, time and opportunity. I do have a lot. I have a couple big encyclopedia-ish books still in my head. And I have things, until I get a contract or until a book is published, I work on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a huge fertility book that I have been working on for 30 years. I mean, that's my first published book. That book was rejected by everybody. And it's encyclopedic. And I think that problem with encyclopedic books is they cover too many topics.
Yeah.
And booksellers and publishers like things that slot nicely into a box. And this doesn't. It's a goddess book, but it's a fertility book. But it's this, but it's that. And that the chapter on magic spells in that book expanded into pure magic. And I have some smaller books and some special interest books. I have a list of encyclopedia of spirits. I keep now. I have my extra spirits.
The extra ones that didn't make it into the first.
Yeah, things I've learned ever since, because you just keep learning.
Yeah,
you can never know everything, so you learn something new.
I mean, even the World Book and Encyclopedia Britannica had yearbooks.
I would like to, I think sometimes maybe I'll do a Patreon one day, because I don't know that anybody would publish an extra spirits book, like Encyclopedia Spirits, an addendum. But I think maybe as a Patreon people, which I don't know, we'll see.
Well, I think we'll kind of talking about like those big encyclopedia books. I think there's like also, in addition to that, like where do you put it problem is that, especially with like the increase in like, this is inside baseball and publishing, but with the increase in printing costs, like a lot of people are like, we can't sell this at a price where we can make money.
Well, Encyclopedia 5,000 Spells was a mistake. I had a contract. We're not mathematicians. I was an English major, and so was my editor. And my editor, when we started work, it was his idea. Greg Brandenburg, who I've worked with on a lot of different things, it was his idea to do 5,000 Spells. I worked with him. He turned down, he rejected my fertility book, but liked a chapter. Mm-hmm. And that chapter became what is now Pure Magic.
Yeah.
And I did another book with him. And then when he went to work at HarperCollins, I have a spell collection. I was constantly, I mean, long story, we probably don't have enough time now, but I had this huge collection of spells on note cards. Mm-hmm. And he knew I had them, and could we turn that into a book? And he talked me into it. And I remember he said to me, "Oh, this will be a big book. You think 450 pages is enough?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "Okay." And that's in the contract, because neither he nor I thought about, there's going to be an introduction. How many spells can you squeeze on a page?
Yeah.
Because it's not a dictionary. A dictionary, you have a word and you have a definition. Brief. This is, spells are more complicated. And some of these spells are long. And for anybody who hasn't seen the book, it's over 1,000 pages. But it was priced incorrectly, because they'd already put out the price for a 450-page book. The price has gone up periodically. Mm-hmm. But I will say that I have 4 encyclopedias and a perpetual calendar. And if you're just looking at numbers, it may look like more than another book, but actually, if you're looking at the content and what you're getting a lot of information, a lot of pages. They're reasonably priced. I have seen much smaller books for double the price.
And for folks who don't have room on their shelves for giant books, they're also in digital, right?
And digital is actually very good. I almost recommend that people they go on sale periodically, and the digital books sometimes are very.
That's how I got 5,000 Spells digitally. It was on BookBub or something for like $2.99, and I was like, I'm 100% getting that. I mean, I have the big one, the print, but I was like, this is so much easier to search.
No, you took the words out of my mouth. I have it because when I need to search, it's so much easier to search. Because the problem with 5,000 Spells, the three really big books, Encyclopedia of 5,000 Spells, Encyclopedia of Witchcraft, and Encyclopedia of Spirits, you can find something and lose it.
Yeah.
5,000 Spells and Witchcraft have indexes. You should use the index. Sometimes you can find it that. People show me their books and they've got multicolored sticky notes on them because that's how you remember where things are. It's a little bit like the internet where you find something once, you better make a notation or save that because it might not be, it might not be here. It's like, Soviet Russia. It could vanish.
It could vanish. Yes. Oh, gosh. Oh, Judika, I'm 1,000% sure we could talk for 2 more hours. And maybe people would listen. Next time, definitely. But I just want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom, sharing this book with me and making me finally read it. Because I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I'm glad you liked it. I was a little worried. I thought there was that moment where I thought, oh no, I've given her a homework assignment.
No, it is a homework assignment I had given myself for a long time. I am not joking about my TBR shame list. And it has been on that, in the top 5 for a really long time.
I have one of those too.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And just, thank you for the work you're doing out in the world and sharing with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
And definitely next time.
Okay, a deal.
WitchLit is a production of 1000 Volt Press and is edited by Julian Rashke. Our intro music is Cosmic Glow by Andrew Kay, and our outro music is Voices by Alexander Shanekar. Transcripts and all our previous episodes are available at witchlitpod.com, and you can follow us on Instagram or Threads at witchlitpod. Please help other witches find us by leaving a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. And thank you for listening to and reading WitchLit.